Read right now.
The Moon by James Buckley, Jr. Look up! People have looked up at the moon for thousands and thousands of years. No matter where you are on Earth, you can see it. The moon travels around the Earth. Together, the Earth and the moon travel around the sun. The moon is a part of our sky and our lives. Let's meet our closest neighbor in space. From the beginning, people wondered, what is the moon? They answered that question with stories that have been handed down over many, many years. In some American Indian stories, the moon helped create the universe and life on Earth. Long ago, the Greeks, the Romans, and the Chinese honored a moon goddess. An English folktale says that the moon is made of green cheese. Have you ever heard of the man in the moon? There are many stories about this face on the moon's surface. The moon has also inspired writers. The famous French author Jules Verne wrote From the Earth to the Moon in 1865. But by that time, we had learned many facts about the moon. Keeping time. Early moon watchers saw that the moon appeared to rise and set. They also noticed that it appeared to change shape. People saw that these events happened in a pattern. The moon changed the same way time after time. Since people long ago did not have clocks, they observed the world around them to keep track of time. One of the best ways to keep time was to watch the moon. The moon takes about 29 days to go around the Earth once. Those 29 days came to be called a month. People began to break up each year into how many times the moon went through this pattern. The 12 times the moon changed became the 12 months of the year. A closer look. How did people first look at the moon? They used their eyes, of course. But some people wanted a closer look. So in the 1600s, they developed telescopes. An Italian scientist of that time, named Galileo Galilei, built a telescope. He could see the moon close up with it. The moon had an uneven surface. Some areas were rough, and some were smooth. Galileo and other scientists began to study the moon closely. Over time, people built bigger and bigger telescopes. They spied huge craters, hills, and mountains on the moon. But there was no man in the moon. In fact, there were no signs of life. Today, the most important telescope is not even on Earth. The Hubble Space Telescope orbits Earth like the moon does. It has taken amazing photos of the moon from space. Not cheese! Looking through all those telescopes proved that the moon isn't green or cheesy. The moon is really made from rock. Scientists say the moon was formed more than 4 billion years ago. An object as big as Mars smashed into the Earth. Pieces of this space object and the Earth broke off on the impact. This debris floated around the Earth. Over time, the pieces came together to form the moon. Over time, the pieces came together to form the moon. The moon in motion. The moon's path around the Earth is called an orbit. The moon also spins like a top as it orbits the Earth. That's why we always see the same side of the moon. The moon takes about 29 days to spin around once, the same as it takes to orbit the Earth once. Why does the moon change shape? It doesn't! What changes is how much of the moon is hit by the sun's light. The moon does not make light. It shines by reflecting light from the sun. As the moon orbits, a different part is lit each night. That's why it appears to change shape over a month. This pattern is called the phases of the moon. Hide-and-seek moon. Sometimes the Earth comes between the sun and the moon. Our planet blocks the sun's light from hitting the moon for a few minutes. This is called a lunar eclipse. Lunar means having to do with the moon. Other times, the moon blocks the sun's rays from the Earth. This is called a solar eclipse. Solar means having to do with the sun. Tides. Gravity is the force that holds us on Earth. Gravity also keeps Earth in orbit around the sun. It keeps the moon spinning around Earth, too. Gravity works both ways. Gravitational pull from the moon reaches the Earth. The moon's gravity creates a daily change in the world's oceans. The gravity of the moon pulls the oceans toward the moon itself. The water bulges toward the moon. As the moon orbits, the bulge in the ocean moves with it. That movement is called the tide. The tide comes in and out twice a day where the oceans meet land, thanks to the moon. The real men on the moon. Studying the moon from afar was not enough. People wanted to go there. In the 1950s, new rockets were built. Soon, the United States and the Soviet Union each launched people into space with these powerful machines. In 1961, the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, set a goal: reach the moon itself by 1969. The space race was on. In the early 1960s, the United States sent the Mercury astronauts into space. They orbited the Earth and learned about space travel. The Mercury missions were practice for traveling to the moon. A later space program was called Apollo, after the Greek god of the sun. These space flights used even larger rockets. Some of them sent people into orbit around the moon for the first time. Each Apollo mission was given a number. During Apollo 8, the astronauts took some famous photos. For the first time in human history, we were able to see what our planet looked like from the moon. Now it was time to win the space race. Apollo 11 launched on July 16, 1969. On board were astronauts Neil Armstrong, Edwin Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. It took Apollo 11 3 days to reach the moon. Armstrong and Aldrin landed a lunar craft on the moon's surface. Collins stayed on board the spacecraft to pick up the other two. On July 20th, Neil Armstrong became the first human to step onto the moon. His words are famous. "One small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." Beyond Apollo 11. Apollo 11's crew were welcomed back to Earth as heroes. Even though they had landed on the moon, the Apollo space program continued. Apollo 12's astronauts dug up lunar soil. They gathered about 70 pounds of moon rocks. Scientists on Earth studied what they brought back. Apollo 13's astronauts didn't make it to the moon. They almost didn't make it back to Earth. A dangerous problem arose on the moving aircraft. The Apollo 13 crew and mission control on Earth had a tense few days to deal with. The astronauts barely returned safely. The troubles with Apollo 13 didn't stop the space program, though. On the next mission, Apollo 14, astronaut Alan Shepard brought a golf club with him. He hit the first golf ball on the moon. Astronauts on Apollo 15 didn't just walk on the moon, they drove. A special lunar rover was built to help them explore larger areas. Crews on Apollo 16 and 17 used the rover as well. Apollo 17 was the last time that human beings visited the moon. So far. People are still exploring the moon with spacecraft. These robotic spacecraft circle the moon and take photographs. Scientists are even discussing building bases on the moon. Our moon is not the only moon in the solar system. Scientists have counted 145 moons around the 8 planets. Could there be other life in the universe? Do you think they look up at their own moons like we do? If you liked this video and want to see more, be sure to subscribe.
See you next time on Read Right Now.